Hi kids, this is Mrs. Gress. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about writing your reading response for your silent reading book. This page has a list of some questions, and you will be receiving a copy of this list of questions a little bit later on. But I wanted to give you some ideas of some different things that you can write about in your reading response. So this page has a list of questions that you could answer about your book. For instance, about the character. How do you relate to this character? Does he or she remind you of someone you know? Why or how? Do you like or dislike the character? Why is that? Are there some things that you would like to tell or ask the character? What kind of things might you have a conversation with about this character? What motivates this character? In other words, what makes them do the things that they do? About the setting. How does the setting affect the story? How does the author make the setting realistic? Especially if it's a science fiction or a fantasy book, the author has to work hard to make you believe that the story is real. Is the setting a place that you would like to be? Plot. Remember, the plot is the general storyline of what is happening in the story. Does the plot of this story follow the plot diagram pattern? We haven't talked about that, but we will be talking about that later. How does something in the plot relate to your life? Has something that happened to the main character ever happened to you or something similar? Do you have a prediction about what will happen? Did you predict what would happen correctly? How would you change the way the conflict is resolved? In other words, the author has to figure out a way to solve the problems of the characters so that the story can have a happily ever after ending. So would you have ended the story the way the author did, or would you have ended it in a different way? From whose perspective is the story told? That means who's telling the story? Is a narrator telling the story? Is the main character telling the story? How might the story be different if someone else told it? Did you get the author's theme or message? The theme is, why did the author write this book? Is there something that the author was trying to teach you? Or was there a specific lesson that the author wanted you to learn from this story? Why do you think the author chose to write on this topic? Mood. What is the mood of the story or of the character in the book? How does the book make you feel? What kind of mood does it put you in? Why? How does this book fit into a particular genre? Remember, a genre is a type or category of literature, such as fiction, nonfiction, historical fiction, science fiction, fantasy, poetry, or even informational books that have true things in them. What do you dislike or like about this genre? How is this book like another book you've read? What does this story make you think about? What kinds of descriptive language does the author use? What did you learn from this story? Why is it valuable? What about the story did you not understand? What things would you like to ask the author of this book? How would you change part of the story if you could rewrite it? How did you use a reading strategy to figure something out in the story? Maybe a word you didn't understand, or if you didn't understand something that was going on. Now I want to give you a couple of examples of reading responses and talk about them a little bit. Here are two examples of a reading response. You'll notice that both of them are about a paragraph long, and I want you to listen to what you can find out from the reading response about the book. Here's an example of a not-so-good reading response. The book I'm reading is really cool. It has weird characters and creatures in it, but I really like it anyway. It's a really long book, and I thought it would be really hard, but it's okay. It's got like over 300 pages in the book, and I'm already halfway through it, so I think I'll be able to finish it by like Christmas. The last book I read was a mystery, and it was good too, but not as good as this one. It was also shorter. I recommend this book because it is so good, and it's one of the best books I've ever read. You shouldn't really You should really read this book if you get a chance. Well, I can't really think of anything else to say. The end. You'll notice that in this entire reading response, while they talk about what they think of the book, it doesn't say anything about what the book is about the characters, or the plot, or the setting, or any predictions they made, or any things that happen in the book that they liked or disliked, or if something, what kinds of creatures these were, or if something happened in the book that was fantasy, like magic or something like that. It has a lot of what I would call fluff sentences. The sentence takes up some space, but it doesn't really say anything. For instance, well, I can't really think of anything else to say. There isn't really any reason to include that sentence because it doesn't share anything about the story. So make sure that your reading response is more like this one. This is an example of a good reading response. I'm reading The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. It is a fantasy book. I know this because there's a magic ring in the story that makes the one who wears it disappear. There are also imaginary creatures like hobbits, dwarves, and elves. My favorite character is Gandalf because he is a very powerful wizard and is fighting against evil. The author uses very descriptive language to describe the settings, which include mountain ranges, valleys, forests, and even a cave. The descriptions make it easy to visualize these settings. I recommend The Hobbit if you like adventure or fantasy stories. Now notice that this reading response isn't any longer than this one, but the information that they give in this reading response gives you a lot more information about what the book is about who's in it, what kind of book it is, and what's happening in the story. So make sure that when you are writing your reading response, you are including details about specific things in the book, and not just writing fluff sentences like, this was a really good book. I think everybody should read it because it's so good. Good luck with your next reading response, and make sure to include lots of details.